Where did your love for writing begin?
I first started with actually writing Dungeons and Dragons campaigns.
Nice.
So I did that in middle school. So I was, I don't know, what, 11 or 12 years old, and I started doing that kind of stuff. You know, I was always a big fantasy fan, and so everything kind of started with that. I used to read Dragonlance books and obviously vampire books, but majority was fantasy. And actually, the very first book I ever actually wrote was a fantasy book.
Oh, nice.
Which I'm still gonna do. Put it to the side for now because I wanted to explore this whole gothic novel horror type genre, and the whole first person aspect. So, because I never really wrote anything first person, and ever since the Hunger Games, I was kind of enthralled to do first person.
Nice.
So, I wanted to do first person that was related to vampires and slaying them in some fashion, you know. But then as I grew up and went, you know, was going into high school and then into college and all that, I did write a bunch of short stories, and that ranged from fiction realism to straight up, you know, sci-fi, steampunk, horror.
Nice.
Like actually, Wolfgang, you know, was generated from a short story that I wrote called Centuries, and it was actually all in the point of view of the Gleesian instead of Tenor, which is who is the protagonist. So it's kind of funny how it works out, doesn't it?
Right, yeah, sure.
So yeah, there is a whole backstory to the vampire side, but I really wanted to explore the human side. And because obviously we're all human and I can relate to a human more than I can a vampire. So, but I definitely, as like a debut novel, for first novel I ever write and publish, I wanted it to be as close to as much stuff as I knew about it.
Sure.
And what would be the easiest process.
Do you think writing that short story helped develop this story for you and give you the confidence to write the novel?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
For sure. And you know, you start writing short stories and you start flying off the handle, you're going all kinds of directions and you got to like focus yourself back. So that's kind of what I did. And I would do a lot of brainstorm writing, a lot of free writing. And then I was like, you know, I can actually mold this and structure this into something tangible. So that's what I started doing. And then the more I wrote it, the more I realized there's more of a story I can tell with the actual hunter, which is Tenor Wolfgang. So, you know, and then of course my love for the Gothic culture anyway,
right?
Castles and monasteries and decrepit and ruined and dark in nature. I've always had a fascination with that. Even when I was doing Dungeons and Dragons back in the day, I would write campaigns focused, you know, on the dark, you know, macabre and vampires and mummies, you know, and werewolves and all this kind of stuff.
Along those lines, then, developing your characters, are you consciously allowing the environment to dictate how they react, or is it more of you're trying to prey on the emotional side of a character when you're developing them?
In this case, for Wolfgang, it's both.
Mm-hmm.
It literally started with the architecture, the scenery, the setting. The setting itself, I could say, is a character all on itself.
Right. Yeah. Sure.
And Gothic subculture is all about that. You know, the architecture and the display of ruin and that sense of foreboding and mystery and darkness and the setting that has a lot to do with it. And it does help develop him as a character. Even though I like to say that this first book is more of an introduction of Wolfgang as opposed to the development of Wolfgang. I plan for the second one to be his development into leading up to the third book, which is then the conclusion of the trilogy.
Along the lines of the writing process for you, you're a musician. If most people don't know that, being a musician, do you write with music in mind? Is there music in your head when you're writing? Is it something that you play? Do you have a playlist for your moods? How do you approach the writing process? Is it you need silence? Just curious, being a musician, how that changes for you as a writer.
Okay, a little background on my musicianship. I started, before I started writing, I actually played instruments. So, and I dabbled on the keyboard and the guitar. And I used to play, my dad taught me how to play acoustic guitar, and that's where my love of music started with. And then, of course, my love for organ music also stemmed from that, because my dad would play jazz organ, and I just kind of fell in love with that whole sound. So, you know, and listening to the Doors and stuff when I was a kid, you know, it's just very, very cool. So I think that kind of dark sense of direction I was going, on top of, you know, classic cult movies back in the day that I would watch, you know, like The Fly and, you know, even Friday the 13th, you know, stuff like that kind of like got me in the direction. So music, yes. When I write, it really just depends on the mood that I'm in, you know. Sometimes I need like 30 minutes of just listening to music before I even start doing anything. A lot of times music would be like an effective medium to get me there, to transition me into that world. Does INFERION, the band, help me with, they're kind of like two separate entities, I would say. Because when you're writing music, it's a lot different than writing a story. Different. We have, however, me and Nick have talked about doing a Wolfgang themed album through INFERION, but you know, if that ever happens.
Did you attempt the traditional route at all, or was it always, I'm going to do this on my own?
I definitely attempted the traditional. I was rejected about 70 times.
Wow.
Two firms actually took some sample chapters and actually entertained the thought of sponsoring me, but you know, it didn't work out. So not publishing houses, but actually agents. I was looking for agents, and you know, most of the responses that I got were that you don't have anything published.
Yeah.
So we're not going to take a chance on you.
Yeah.
This stuff is good, they would say, but they'd say, but about you. So they said, so the main answer I got was I wasn't established.
Yeah.
So that kind of pissed me off, and I was like, you know, I understand there's about millions and millions of authors out there trying to do the same thing I'm doing, but if you like the material, you might as well try to invest in it. But I guess they didn't want to do that. You know, they want to see authors do a lot of the legwork in the beginning. So that's what I'm doing now.
Yeah. When you went the indie route, though, did you find that rewarding? What do you like about being indie?
There's a lot of great things about being indie. You get to do what the hell you want. There's nobody telling you what to do. You know, you make your own schedule, you make your own deadlines. It's the ideal path for somebody who works a lot and has outside writing process. You know, if I had deadlines and all that, I'm not sure I would make them, because I just have a whole lot going on outside of the writing world. So and you know, some people say like, oh, you know, how did you find time to write a book? You know, like to a lot of people that just mind boggles them. You know, they're like, whoa, you wrote a book? What? I'm like, yeah, well, you know, instead of you know, watching whatever or binge watching a Netflix series, which I've done, but I've done it a lot less. You know, you just got to make the best of your time as possible.
Sure, absolutely.
And the worst thing as being a writer is being stuck somewhere where you can't write what you need to write. And and let me bless Evernote, okay? Evernote, the app, okay? Because Evernote, I can literally jot down anything, and it's readily accessible to me wherever I go. So if it wasn't for that, I don't think I would have finished Wolfgang.
One of the things that drew me to you and introduced me to you was one of the coolest things I've seen, and that's you take your YouTube channel and you have been reading a chapter from your book. Almost, is it weekly? Is it biweekly? I'm not sure, but I think it's weekly,
Yeah,
right? That you do that?
yeah, I've been trying to do it weekly. I have been for like the past couple of weeks now. And usually I'll do 2 chapters a night too if the 2 chapters are short.
Sure.
So I've done that like 2 times, but
Where did the idea come from?
you know, just like I was about earlier with the entertainment business as a whole, whether
Uh-huh.
it's music, film, books, novels, people are getting stuff for free all over the place, right?
Right.
So, and I know like floating around for free right now, people are downloading it, whatever, they're not buying it.
Right. Sure.
They're pirating it, whatever, and that's fine. The way I see it is the more hands that it lands in, and the more people see it, the more interest you're going to generate,
Yeah.
the more traction you're going to have. And so the YouTube channel idea was just another way of drawing more attention to it.
Nice.
And the fact that I'm a Christopher Lee fan,
Oh,
and
nice.
he has like the best voice ever,
Yes.
and he's in just listening to him read books, he read some excerpts from the Silmarillion, which I love, and it's like I was like, oh, I want his voice, and to be able to read like that, and I do like telling stories as well as writing them. So like I read to my daughter every night. I read her Harry Potter.
That's awesome.
And when I'm done reading or get to a certain point, I'll like look up at her and she's just like, just like, wow, entertained, which I like to do that. I like to entertain people. So yeah, so I get the best of both worlds on the YouTube channel.
Yeah.
I get to do what I want, which is read my story and get it out to people for free who can't, if you can't afford it, you can't afford it, but at least you can go on YouTube and you can listen to it there for free, and maybe even see some imagery that might relate to it, or some music that might inspire you to do something just because you heard that, the combination of the words that I wrote with the music that you're listening to. It's just it's all interpretation.
Yeah.
And I'm a big fan of driving and listening to audiobooks. So if you want to listen to my story while you're driving, do it.